"Dad," she murmured, "please don't make this difficult. Andrew deserves a clean start. Vanessa's family is particular." Particular. Another word for controlling. What did Vanessa's family offer you? I asked quietly. Melissa's eyes widened just a fraction. Then her smile returned. Offer me? Nothing. Why would you? I didn't push. Not yet. I simply said, "Get some sleep, sweetheart." I watched her walk back into the light, shoulders tight, and I thought, she's already spent the money in her head. That night in my hotel room, I placed a ring on the desk under the lamp. I studied it the way I used to study lease agreements, what it promised, what it concealed, what it could prove. The inscription was inside the band, neat and old. To LM always. Not Vanessa, not Andrew. LM. I opened my laptop and pulled up the guest list. Bridesmaids, groomsmen, family. No LM. Then I remembered something small. Vanessa had an ex. Andrew had mentioned him once, dismissively, like a bug on a windshield. Old money guy, he'd said. She says he was controlling. Controlling men are rarely left without paperwork. I took a photo of the inscription and emailed it to my attorney, Ira Mendelsohn, with one line. Need to know if this ring can tie to any prior legal dispute. Call me at 7 a.m. Then I set the folder Diane gave me on the bed and read every page with the quiet patience of a man who has outlived several versions of betrayal. There was language about continuity of management for Calder Holdings, about succession planning, about temporary authority. Temporary authority is how permanent theft starts. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. Thanks for being supportive tonight. Means a lot. Love you. I stared at it for a long time. They always send love when they want you soft. I typed back, love you too. Proud of you. And then I turned off the lights and listened to the air conditioner hum like a countdown. The next morning, I met Andrew for coffee at a place on South Congress, where the chairs were uncomfortable on purpose. He arrived late, hair still damp, wearing the tired look of a man who'd been coached through his own life. He hugged me, quick and hard, like he was trying to absorb my steadiness. You okay? He asked. I'm fine, I said. You're the one getting married. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Vanessa's mom is intense, but she means well. Does she? I stir my coffee slowly. What are you signing on Friday? His smile faltered. Just stuff. Trust updates. Dad, it's normal. Vanessa's family has a structure. They're just trying to help us. Help us. I leaned back, my hands flat on the table. Andrew, do you know what power of attorney means? He exhaled, annoyed now. It means if something happens. It means someone else can act as you. I said calm. Buy, sell, borrow. It's not a symbolic gesture. He looked away, jaw tight. Vanessa said you'd react like this. There it was, the pre-written script. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply asked, and what did you say to that? He hesitated. I said you're cautious. Cautious. The insult disguised as respect. I nodded once. Good. Caution keeps a man alive. Andrew's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face softened in a way I'd only seen when he was being handled. Vanessa needs me, he said, standing. We're meeting the planner. Of course you are. I watched him leave, and I felt something old and heavy settle in my chest. Not anger, not even sadness. The quiet grief of realizing your child has become a door other people walk through. As I drove back to my house in Westlake Hills, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car and looked at the front windows, the clean lines of a home I'd paid off 15 years earlier. This house wasn't just a house. It was security, memory, proof that I'd built something stable. And stability makes people greedy. I went inside, opened the safe in my office, and pulled out the documents I hadn't shown anyone in my family. Calder Holdings wasn't owned the way they assumed. 10 years earlier, after my wife died, I created a living trust with a separate holding trust for the company units. It was quiet, boring, and thorough. Ira had insisted. Your kids love you, he'd said. But love doesn't stop entitlement. Paper does. The trust had a protector clause, a third-party oversight mechanism. And most importantly, any amendment required my signature in front of 2 witnesses and my attorney, plus a recorded statement affirming capacity and intent. It wasn't paranoia. It was experience. I opened the folder from Diane again. The page referencing a trust amendment didn't include those requirements. It assumed a simpler structure. They didn't know the locks that were already on the doors they planned to walk through. My phone rang. "Ira, you up early," he said. "I'm not sleeping," I replied. "Tell me about the ring." I ran the inscription through a few channels. Ira said, "If it's genuine, it matches a ring mentioned in a civil filing out of Connecticut. A woman named Vanessa Hartwell was involved in a breach of promise dispute 2 years ago. Settled out of court." I felt my fingers tighten on the phone. "She was engaged," I said. "Yes," Ira replied, "and the ring was listed as part of the settlement terms. There was language about returning it. If she has it now, that's not great." Not great was Ira's way of saying it could be dynamite. I stared out my office window at the oak tree in the yard, the branches heavy and still. "How do we verify?" I asked. "I can request the filing records," Ira said. "But here's the bigger thing. Diane's attorney called my office yesterday." I didn't speak. "They wanted to know if you'd changed counsel," Ira continued. "They said you were planning to sign family continuity documents with them on Friday." My voice stayed even. "And what did you say?" "I said you still retain me, and that any documents involving Calder Holdings would be reviewed by me first." A pause. "They didn't like that," Ira added. I could picture Diane's smile collapsing into something sharper. "Good," I said. "Let them be uncomfortable." Ira exhaled. "Edward, what's your goal here?" I looked at the trust documents on my desk. I looked at the ring. I looked at the clock. "My goal," I said, "is to make sure my son doesn't wake up 10 years from now and realize he signed away his life because he wanted a peaceful wedding." Ira was quiet. "Then we need to move quickly. Friday is close." "I know," I said, "and I want something else." "What?" "I want them to keep thinking I'm signing," I said. "I want them relaxed." I could hear Ira's caution through the line. "We can do that lawfully, but we have to be careful." "Careful is what I do," I said. After we hung up, I sat with the silence for a while. Then I drafted an email to Diane's attorney. "Looking forward to Friday. Please send full packet in advance for review." It was polite, cooperative, the kind of message that makes predators feel safe. Within 3 minutes, I got a reply. "Absolutely. We'll have everything prepared for quick execution." Quick execution. They wanted this done before anyone could think. My next call was to a private jeweler I'd used years ago for an appraisal. Not a friend, a professional. I didn't ask for favors. I asked for documentation. By noon, the jeweler confirmed what I already suspected. The ring was old, valuable, and had a serial identifier on the inner prong consistent with a high-end estate piece. It wasn't costume jewelry. It was an asset, and Vanessa had treated it like insurance. I sat down at my desk and wrote a timeline on a legal pad. 9 days to wedding, 8 days to Friday signing, 14 days until the trust's quarterly distribution to beneficiaries, Melissa and Andrew, was scheduled to hit their accounts. That last one mattered, because once the distribution hit, it could be leveraged, loaned against, promised, spent, used to justify decisions. If they were moving now, it was because they needed control before the distribution. My family thought the wedding was the event. I knew the distribution was the real deadline. That afternoon, Melissa came by my house unannounced. She had that brisk energy of someone who's been given a role and is determined to perform it well. She walked into my office without waiting to be invited. "You didn't answer my texts," she said. "I was working," I replied. She glanced at the folder on my desk, the trust papers partially visible. Her eyes sharpened like a dog catching scent. "Dad," she said, softer now, "you're scaring Andrew. Diane said you're refusing to cooperate." "I haven't refused anything," I said. Melissa's mouth tightened. "Then just sign. It's not like you're going to live forever." She said it casually, too casually. The room went very quiet. I looked at my daughter, at the face I'd held when she was a baby, a face that now wore impatience like perfume. "Say that again," I said. She blinked, startled. "I didn't mean." "No," I said. "Say it again." Melissa swallowed. "Dad, come on. You know what I mean." I nodded slowly. "I know exactly what you mean." Her eyes flicked to my desk again. "You've always been controlling." It was almost impressive, the way she tried to turn the knife around and hand it back to me. I leaned forward slightly. "Melissa, when you say things like that, you should assume I'm listening the way a judge listens." Her face reddened. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm informing you." She scoffed, but her hands were trembling a little. "You're going to ruin Andrew's wedding over paperwork." I didn't raise my voice. If paper can ruin it, it wasn't love holding it together. Melissa stared at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't, because she'd built her adult relationship with me on the assumption that I would always trade respect for peace. She turned sharply toward the door. "Fine," she snapped. "Do whatever you want. Just don't expect us to clean up the mess when you're gone." She left. I sat in the silence she left behind and wrote one line on my legal pad. Melissa is not an innocent bystander. 2 days later, Vanessa invited me to lunch. Not Andrew. Not the family. Just me. We met at a restaurant overlooking Lady Bird Lake. Glass walls, bright water, expensive quiet. Vanessa arrived in a pale dress that made her look harmless, like a person you could trust near fragile things. She kissed my cheek and sat close enough to suggest intimacy, far enough to maintain control. "Edward," she said, smiling, "I feel like we haven't really connected." "We've spoken," I said. "That's not the same," she replied. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "I want you to know I care about Andrew, and I care about family." "Family again," said the way people say investment. She sipped her water and watched me over the rim of the glass. "My parents think you don't like them," she said. "I don't know them," I replied. Her smile stayed. "They're just worried about you. They've seen situations. Older men getting taken advantage of, kids struggling, estates becoming messy." I waited. Vanessa set the glass down carefully. They suggested something. A gesture. Something that would make Andrew feel safe going into the marriage. And what would make him feel safe? I asked. She looked me directly in the eyes, knowing that if anything happened to you, there wouldn't be disputes. There it was, the soft version of Melissa's blunt cruelty. "What do you mean by anything?" I asked. Vanessa's voice remained gentle. "Life is unpredictable. People have accidents, health events, and I know you're strong, but—" I cut in quietly. "You're asking me to sign away control so you can sleep better." Her smile faltered for the first time. "I'm asking you to think of Andrew," she said, and now there was steel under the velvet. "He doesn't need stress." I nodded as if conceding. Vanessa relaxed, just slightly, the way people do when they think they've pushed you into the corner. "I will review the documents," I said, "and I'll do what's appropriate." Her smile returned, brighter. "Thank you. That's all we want. What's appropriate?" I didn't mention the ring. Not yet. Instead, I asked one question, casually, like a man making conversation. "Do you like antiques?" I said. Vanessa blinked. "What?" "I saw an old ring the other night." I said. "Estate piece. Inscription inside. Interesting." Her fingers tightened around her napkin. A small movement, almost invisible. "I don't know anything about rings," she said. I nodded once. Of course. I let the lie sit between us like a third-place setting. And as we ate, I watched her carefully. Not for emotion, for control. When I left the restaurant, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt certain. That week, I let them believe the story they wanted. I answered Diane's calls with polite brevity. I returned Vanessa's texts with short, respectful responses. I told Andrew I was proud of him again, because he needed to hear it even if he didn't deserve my silence. Behind that story, I built the other one. Ira filed a request for the Connecticut case record and obtained a summary confirming Vanessa had previously accepted a settlement that required return of an engagement ring. The ring wasn't just sentimental property. It was evidence of breach. Not criminal, but damaging. The kind of thing that makes a family obsessed with reputation suddenly quiet. I also had Ira prepare a formal notice to the trustees overseeing my holding trust. Any attempted amendment not executed under the trust's required formalities would be invalid and treated as a hostile act. And then I did the most important part. I scheduled a family meeting at Ira's office for the Monday after the wedding. Not before. After. They thought Friday was the finish line. I let them believe it, because the best traps are the ones people walk into smiling. Friday arrived like a storm you can smell before it hits. The signing was at a downtown Austin law office with a view meant to impress. Diane and Mark arrived early, dressed like they were going to a fundraiser. Vanessa arrived with Andrew, holding his hand tightly, smiling like this was just another wedding appointment. Melissa came too, which told me everything I needed to know. They all stood when I walked in, as if I were a guest of honor. I was the asset, the attorney they hired. A man with a perfect tie and a practiced smile shook my hand. "Mr. Calder," he said warmly, "we'll make this quick and easy for you." Quick and easy. Always. I sat down slowly. Ira sat beside me calm, his briefcase closed. Diane's smile stiffened when she saw him. "Oh," she said, "you brought counsel." "I brought my counsel," I replied, "the one I've had for years." The attorney's smile twitched. "We weren't informed." "You weren't required to be," Ira said, voice mild. "Proceed." There was a brief pause, the first crack in their confidence. Then the attorney began flipping through documents, explaining them in that soothing way people do when they're trying to slide something past you. Power of attorney, management authority, temporary control of Calder Holdings for continuity. Vanessa squeezed Andrew's hand. Andrew looked relieved, like he wanted this done. I listened. I nodded occasionally. When the attorney slid the pen toward me, I picked it up. Everyone leaned in, hungry, and then I set the pen down. "I'd like to ask one question," I said. The attorney smiled, strained. "Of course." I looked at Diane. "Why does this packet reference a trust amendment that isn't attached?" Diane's smile didn't move. "It's standard language." I turned to the attorney. "Is it standard to ask someone to sign a reference to a document they haven't seen?" The attorney cleared his throat. "We can provide." Ira opened his briefcase for the first time and slid a single page across the table. "This is Mr. Calder's trust execution requirement," Ira said. "Any amendment requires formalities you cannot satisfy in this office without my prepared recording and witnesses." The room went still. Diane's face tightened. "Edward, this is unnecessary." I looked at her calmly. "Unnecessary for whom?" Vanessa's smile vanished. "This is about Andrew," she snapped, the first time she'd dropped the softness. "Why are you doing this now?" I turned to her, slow. "Because you're in a hurry." Andrew's eyes widened. "Dad, please." I held up a hand, not harsh, just firm. "Sit, Andrew." He sat, automatically, like a child who remembered an old rule. I reached into my jacket and placed a ring on the table. Vanessa's breath caught. It was small, but I heard it. "This ring," I said quietly, "was handed to me by a cleaner at the rehearsal. She said it wasn't yours." Diane stared at it, confused. Mark leaned forward, squinting. Vanessa's face had gone pale. I rotated the ring, so the inscription faced upward. "To LM always," I read. No one spoke. Then I looked at Vanessa. "Who is LM?" Vanessa swallowed. "I don't know." I didn't argue. I didn't press like a prosecutor. I simply slid another document onto the table, an excerpt Ira had prepared, summarizing the Connecticut settlement terms and the ring's role. Vanessa's eyes darted across the page. Diane's eyes followed, and Diane's face changed. Not concern, not confusion. Fear. Because reputation-obsessed people don't fear losing money first. They fear losing the story. Diane's voice came out thin. "This is private." "No," I said. "This is relevant." Mark's jaw tightened. "Are you accusing Vanessa of something?" "I'm saying she called it insurance," I replied. "And that tells me she plans for exits, which means she plans for leverage. And now you're all sitting here trying to take control of my company before the wedding." Andrew's face crumpled. Vanessa, what is this? Vanessa's eyes flashed, desperate now. It's nothing. Your father is trying to sabotage us. Melissa stood abruptly. Dad, stop. This is insane. I looked at my daughter. You told me last week I won't live forever. Melissa froze. The attorney shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Calder, perhaps we should. I raised a hand. No, we're done. I stood. Ira stood with me, calm. I will not be signing anything prepared by people who approach me under false pretenses, I said, and I will be making my own arrangements. Diane's mask cracked. Edward, you can't do this. Think of Andrew. Think of what people will say. I looked at her steadily. I have thought of it. For days. That's why we're here. I didn't leave them with a threat. I left them with certainty. The wedding is in 9 days, I said. You're welcome to proceed. But understand something. Calder Holdings will not be available for your continuity. And any attempt to represent otherwise will be met legally. Then I walked out with Ira. Behind us, I heard Vanessa begin to cry. Real tears now, not the pretty kind. I didn't turn around. The wedding still happened. Of course it did. They needed the photos, the social proof, the illusion that everything was fine. But the tone changed. Vanessa didn't smile at me the way she used to. Diane avoided my eyes. Melissa stayed close to Andrew, like she was trying to keep him from drifting back toward me. Andrew looked hollow. Not angry, not relieved, just hollow. And I let him be hollow. Sometimes a man needs to feel the weight of the choices he's made before he can put them down. For days after the wedding, the quarterly trust distribution deadline hit. 14 days from the rehearsal dinner, exactly as the calendar had threatened. But the money didn't land the way they expected, because the day after the Friday signing attempt, I had executed a lawful change. The distribution would be held in escrow pending completion of a mandatory family mediation clause that existed in the trust and had never once been invoked. A clause Ira had insisted on years ago. A clause no one remembered, until it mattered. I didn't cancel their money out of spite. I delayed it for process, and process is where liars suffocate. The mediation meeting was scheduled at Ira's office the following Monday, the one I'd planned all along. That was the final stage. Not a shouting match, not a dinner table blow-up, a room with paper and witnesses and consequences. They arrived tense and angry, but still trying to maintain the story. Diane sat upright, hands clasped. Mark stared at the floor. Melissa looked like she hadn't slept. Andrew came in last, alone. Vanessa was not with him. That was the first real turn I'd seen in my son in months. He sat down across from me and didn't look away. Ira began calmly. This mediation is required for distribution release due to an attempted unauthorized controlled transfer of trust assets. Diane's voice snapped. We didn't attempt anything unauthorized. Ira slid a copy of the Friday packet across the table, with annotations. This, he said, references a trust amendment not executed under required formalities. It attempts to grant third parties management authority over a closely held company held in trust. That is, by definition, an attempt. Melissa leaned forward. So what, you're punishing us? I looked at her, not with anger, but with disappointment. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm protecting what I built from people who see it as a prize. Andrew's voice came out quiet. Vanessa told me it was normal. She said you'd never understand how families like hers operate. He swallowed. And then I found out about the ring. Diane's head snapped toward him. Andrew. He held up a hand, mirroring my gesture from Friday. No. The room went silent again. It was a different silence now. Less theatrical. More honest. Andrew looked at me. Did you know before Friday? I suspected, I said, and I prepared. His eyes glistened. He didn't cry. He just looked older. What happens now? He asked. I exhaled slowly. Now, you get to choose what kind of man you are when no one is clapping. I slid a single document across the table toward him. It wasn't a weapon. It was a boundary, a revised succession plan for Calder Holdings. Andrew would still inherit my interest, but only through a spendthrift trust protecting him from spousal claims and external pressure. Melissa's interest would be reduced, not eliminated, reduced, because she participated. And there would be a professional trustee, not family, managing distributions based on clear standards. Lawful, proportional, final. Melissa's face went white. You can't. I can, I said quietly. And I did. Diane's voice trembled. This is vindictive. I looked at her. No, vindictive would be trying to ruin your daughter-in-law publicly. Vanessa's absence hung in the air like smoke. I haven't done that, I continued, because this isn't about humiliation. It's about stopping a pattern. Mark finally spoke, voice rough. What do you want? I paused, letting the room feel the weight. I want Andrew protected, I said, and I want you all to understand that access to my assets is not a birthright. It is a privilege earned by respect. Andrew stared at the document for a long time. Then he picked up the pen. Diane leaned forward. Andrew, don't. He looked at her, and his voice was steady in a way I hadn't heard in months. I'm signing. And then he added, without looking at Vanessa's mother or mine. I didn't realize how much I was being managed until Dad stopped cooperating. He signed. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Justice, when it's real, doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like the click of a lock. After the meeting, Melissa followed me into the hallway, her voice low and furious. You just took my future, she hissed. I stopped and looked at her. No, I said. You tried to take mine. I simply stopped you. Her eyes filled with tears, anger tears, not sorrow. You always think you're the smartest person in the room, she said. I held her gaze. No, I just know what greed looks like when it wears family clothing. She turned away, shoulders shaking. Andrew stood by the door, waiting until she was gone. Vanessa filed for annulment, he said quietly. Or she's trying to. She said the marriage was entered under misrepresentation. I nodded slowly. Of course she did. He looked down. I'm sorry. I studied my son's face. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The man I'd failed to teach how to recognize a trap when it smiled at him. I'm not interested in apologies, I said. I'm interested in what you do next. Andrew swallowed. I want to learn. For real. I placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and brief. Then start by reading what you sign, I said, and by noticing who rushes you. He nodded. As I walked out onto the courthouse-adjacent sidewalk, bright Texas sun, cars humming past, I felt a strange calm that comes when the worst has already happened and you've survived it without becoming ugly. They'd thought the wedding was the moment they won. They hadn't understood the double story. While they planned the photos, I planned the paperwork. While they practiced smiles, I practiced restraint. And when the deadline arrived, it wasn't my life that changed. It was their access. The lesson is simple, and it fits in one line. The kind people remember when they're tempted to trust the wrong voice. Love without boundaries is just a contract you didn't read. At the wedding rehearsal, a cleaner pressed a ring into my palm and whispered, "This isn't hers." And in that moment I realized my family's plan had already been set in motion. The night air outside the Fairmont in Austin had that expensive, damp softness that clings to linen and perfume. Inside, everything was beige marble, polite lighting, and the kind of smiles people rehearse in mirrors. My son, Andrew, was marrying Vanessa in 9 days. 9 days until the ceremony. 9 days until the moment a lot of people would assume our family became one thing. I'd learned a long time ago that families don't become one thing. They become paper. I was standing near the ballroom doors when the cleaner approached. Short woman, hair tight under a cap, pushing a cart like she was invisible on purpose. She didn't look up when she spoke. "This fell," she said, and she didn't put it in my hand at first. She held it out like it might burn her. It was a ring, heavy and bright. Too bright. I took it. It wasn't Vanessa's engagement ring. That one I'd seen on her finger 100 times in 9 months. Tasteful, restrained, chosen to photograph well. This one was different. Thicker band, old-cut stones, the kind that came from an estate, not a mall. The underside had an inscription. I turned it with my thumb, slow. And the cleaner finally looked at me. Her eyes didn't ask for money. They asked whether I understood. "This isn't hers," she repeated, quieter. I saw her put it in a napkin. She told the bridesmaids it was insurance. Insurance. I nodded once. Not gratitude. Not shock. Acknowledgement. The kind men give when something slots into place, and they don't want anyone to hear it click. I didn't correct her. I didn't ask questions. I let her think I was just an older man being helpful. Because the first rule of people who steal is they always assume they're the only ones capable of planning. Inside the ballroom, Vanessa's mother, Diane, was holding court near the floral mock-ups, her voice pitched in that sweet way that turns cruel if you resist it. "Edward," she called when she saw me. "There you are. We were just talking about the timeline." Timeline. Another word for deadline. I slipped the ring into my jacket pocket and walked back into the light, calm as if nothing had changed. In my family, calm was often mistaken for softness. That mistake had paid my bills for 40 years. They had the rehearsal dinner, and I watched the performance like a man watching a play he'd already read the ending to. Andrew laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Vanessa touched his arm like she was reminding him he belonged to her now. People said things like legacy and new chapter, and we're so blessed, as if blessings were transferable assets. Every time Vanessa's gaze skimmed over me, it paused for a fraction too long. Not affection, calculation. My daughter, Melissa, sat beside Diane like a junior partner. Melissa had always been bright, ambitious, and impatient with anything that didn't reward her immediately. She leaned toward me at one point, voice soft. "Dad, you look tired," she said, loud enough for nearby people to hear. "Are you feeling okay?" Just with everything going on. Performative concern. The kind that plants a seed in a room. "I'm fine," I said. Her smile held. "Good, because we need you sharp for the signing next week." The signing. No one had said the word earlier, but I'd heard it in the way Diane used timeline, in the way Vanessa's father, Mark, kept glancing at his watch like this dinner was a checkpoint, not a celebration. I didn't ask what signing. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me reach for context like a man reaching for his glasses. I just said, "Next week," and let it sound like agreement. I could feel the ring against my thigh, a quiet weight, and I could feel something else too. The beginning of a ticking clock I hadn't agreed to, but would still be forced to obey. Because I knew my son. Andrew wanted this wedding to be the end of stress, not the beginning of understanding. If I came at him hard, he'd shut down. He'd choose Vanessa, because choosing Vanessa would feel like choosing peace. So I stayed quiet. But quiet is not the same as still. After dinner, when the room loosened and the liquor made everyone braver, Diane approached me with a folder held against her chest like a hymn book. "Edward," she said, "can we have a moment?" She didn't ask like she meant it. We stepped into a side corridor lined with framed photos of Austin skylines. The carpet was thick enough to swallow footsteps, which made conversations feel private even when they weren't. Diane opened the folder and angled it so I could see the top page. Estate modernization. It read in clean, confident font. She smiled. "It's really just housekeeping. Andrew's starting his life. Vanessa's joining the family. We all want things to be streamlined." Streamlined was a word people used when they wanted your signature without your questions. I let my eyes scan the page without moving my face. Power of attorney language. Medical directives. Financial authority. A trust amendment referenced, but not attached. "This is for after the wedding," she said, as if that made it gentle. "You'll be traveling more, right? And you've been managing things alone for so long." Managing things. What she meant was controlling things. The core asset in our family wasn't sentiment. It was Calder Holdings, a small but stubbornly profitable commercial property company I'd built over 3 decades. Warehouses, light industrial, a few medical offices, boring assets, reliable rents, the kind of wealth that didn't sparkle, which meant people forgot it was there until they wanted it. Calder Holdings wasn't just my income. It was the gravitational center of my family. Everything orbited it, even when they pretended not to. I looked at Diane. "You want me to sign tonight?" Her smile widened, relieved. "Not tonight. We'd never pressure you. Just before the ceremony. We're meeting with our attorney on Friday. It's all standard." Friday. That gave me 8 days. 8 days, and they were already moving papers around like they owned the table. I nodded slowly, as if considering. Leave it with me. Diane's eyes flickered, surprise, then satisfaction. She'd expected resistance or confusion. My calm looked like compliance. Of course, she said. Take your time. She touched my arm like she was comforting a man she'd already decided was fading. As she walked away, Melissa appeared from the ballroom entrance, a glass of wine in hand, face arranged into concern.